The wedding guests gasped as the bride turned away from the altar. Not because she was running from marriage. Because she was trying to escape the most feared man in Europe before he could become her husband. Rain pounded against the stained-glass windows of the centuries-old cathedral, turning the afternoon into a storm-darkened blur. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the church bells as Emilia Hartley gathered the heavy satin of her ivory gown and sprinted down the marble aisle. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. Crying had never solved anything. 29 years old, proudly curvy, and known throughout London's elite hotels as one of the most gifted event planners in the country, Emilia had built her career rescuing impossible occasions from disaster. She believed every problem had a solution. Except this one. The marriage contract hidden inside her bouquet had revealed the truth only minutes before the ceremony. She wasn't marrying for peace between powerful families. She was being traded. Someone intended to use her wedding to assassinate the groom, and frame her for it. If she stayed, the Mafia Boss would die. If she ran, his soldiers would hunt her. The cathedral doors burst open. Cold rain slapped her face as she raced into the courtyard, searching desperately for the taxi she had secretly arranged. It never arrived. Instead, a line of matte black armored SUVs rolled silently through the gates. One by one they surrounded her. The bodyguards didn't raise their weapons. They simply waited. The rear door of the center vehicle opened. Polished Italian shoes touched the wet stone. Then came the man every criminal empire feared. Luca De Santis. Billionaire. Mafia king. A strategist whose calm voice had ended more wars than bullets ever had. His charcoal suit looked untouched by the rain. His expression remained unreadable, almost bored, yet every guard instinctively lowered his eyes when he stepped forward. Emilia's pulse thundered. He should have been inside the cathedral. Standing at the altar. So why was he here? You planned to leave, Luca said quietly. It wasn't a question. She straightened her shoulders despite the soaked wedding dress clinging to her curves. I planned to stop someone from murdering you. For the first time, one of his eyebrows lifted. Around them, dozens of armed guards exchanged uncertain glances. Most people begged for mercy in front of Luca De Santis. This bride accused someone of plotting his death. You expect me to believe that? He asked. I don't expect anything. Her chin lifted. I expect you to search the bouquet. Silence. One of the guards hesitated before looking toward Luca. The Mafia Boss gave a slight nod. The bouquet was opened. Hidden beneath white roses lay a compact pistol fitted with a suppressor. The courtyard froze. A dangerous stillness settled over everyone. Luca slowly looked back at Emilia. She hadn't lied. Someone had carefully designed a massacre. His assassination. Her execution. A war. Most women would have collapsed under the weight of such terror. Instead, Emilia stood in drenched satin with trembling hands she refused to hide. Luca studied her longer than was comfortable. Fear lived in her eyes. So did courage. Interesting. Who are you really? He asked. I'm exactly who I said I am. She met his gaze without flinching. An event planner. Several guards laughed under their breath. An event planner? Standing in the center of one of the deadliest mafia conspiracies in decades? Ridiculous. Luca's eyes never left hers. Then plan your next event. She frowned. What event? The meeting where we discover who wanted me dead. Before she could answer, a deafening explosion ripped through the cathedral behind them. Flames burst through the stained glass windows. Stone shattered across the courtyard as screams filled the rain-soaked air. A second sniper shot cracked through the chaos. A bullet struck the SUV inches from Emilia's head. Without hesitation, Luca stepped between her and the gunfire. His hand closed firmly around hers. You were trying to leave my world, he said, his voice calm despite the inferno behind them. Now you're staying in it. As another shot echoed through the smoke, the convoy accelerated toward the hidden fortress that ruled his empire, and Emilia realized escape was no longer possible. The fortress wasn't marked on any map. Hidden behind towering cliffs overlooking the Ligurian Sea, Luca De Santis's estate looked less like a mansion and more like a kingdom built for war. Iron gates taller than ancient oaks sealed the only entrance, while armed patrols moved across immaculate gardens with military precision. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors, priceless paintings lined endless corridors, and every room whispered unimaginable wealth. Yet Emilia noticed something everyone else overlooked. The household was living in fear. Staff members spoke in hushed voices. Security officers rarely smiled. Every schedule changed without warning. Even breakfast was served under the watchful eyes of armed guards. Chaos disguised itself as discipline. As an event planner responsible for coordinating international summits, royal fundraisers and luxury galas, Emilia had learned that disorder always left fingerprints. By her third morning, she quietly began writing observations in a leather notebook. Kitchen deliveries arrived at different hours every day. Security briefings frequently started late. Guest records didn't match surveillance logs. Someone inside the estate kept altering routines. "You've been making notes." Luca's deep voice interrupted her thoughts as she stood on the terrace overlooking the sea. She closed the notebook. "I notice patterns." He walked beside her, hands tucked into the pockets of a tailored navy suit. "So I've heard." She looked at him. "You investigated me." "I investigate everyone." For a moment neither spoke. Waves crashed against the cliffs below. Finally he asked, "What have you found?" Instead of answering immediately, Emilia handed him the notebook. "You have excellent security." He raised an eyebrow. "But terrible coordination." He scanned the pages. Every inconsistency had been marked with dates, times, and possible explanations. No emotions. Only facts. "You found all this in 72 hours? I organize weddings with thousands of guests." A faint smile touched her lips. Compared to nervous brides, mafia soldiers are surprisingly predictable. For the first time since they'd met, Luca laughed. It was quiet, brief, almost unfamiliar. The guards standing nearby exchanged startled glances. They couldn't remember the last time their boss had laughed. Later that afternoon, Luca summoned his senior captains to the conference room. Massive digital maps covered one wall while intelligence reports filled the polished black table. Emilia entered carrying coffee for herself, intending only to retrieve a misplaced folder. One captain looked at her curvy figure and smirked. "Wrong room, sweetheart." Another added with a chuckle, "Planning dinner menus now?" The room filled with restrained laughter. Emilia calmly placed her coffee down. "No." She picked up a marker and walked toward the digital schedule projected across the wall. "You've scheduled tonight's convoy using the same departure pattern you've repeated 6 times this month." Silence. She circled 3 timestamps. "These deliveries overlap your security rotation." Another circle. "And this meeting leaves the west entrance completely exposed for exactly 11 minutes. Several captains frowned. She wasn't finished. "If I were trying to assassinate Mr. De Santis, I'd attack here." Her marker stopped at an underground access tunnel. "The cameras create a 30-second blind spot every shift change." The room went silent. One security director hurriedly checked the surveillance feed. His face lost its color. "She's right." Another officer quickly pulled up archived footage. The blind spot had existed for months. No one had noticed. Luca watched Emilia with unreadable eyes. Most people wanted to impress him. She wanted to solve problems. There was a difference. As the meeting ended, he caught up with her in the corridor. "You embarrassed half my command." "I corrected them." "They won't forgive that." "I wasn't asking them to." For several seconds he simply studied her. Then he spoke softly. "You don't need to make yourself smaller to stand beside me." She looked away, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "I've spent my whole life trying not to take up too much space." His expression hardened, not at her but at the world that had taught her that lesson. "You never have to shrink yourself again." Something inside Emilia, carefully protected for years, shifted. That evening, while reviewing the estate's archived event schedules, Emilia noticed an unusual invoice hidden among catering records. It wasn't for flowers, or security, or transportation. It was payment to a logistics company that didn't exist. The authorization signature belonged to one of Luca's oldest advisors. Yet the payment destination traced back to territory controlled by the Romano Syndicate, the De Santis family's most dangerous rival. Her heartbeat quickened. Someone inside the empire was secretly funding the enemy. Before she could photograph the document, the office door creaked open. Footsteps stopped just outside. A shadow lingered beneath the crack of the door. Someone had been watching her. The doorknob began to turn. The doorknob stopped halfway. Emilia instinctively closed the folder, slipped the copied invoice into the sleeve of her notebook, and stepped away from the desk just as the office door swung open. An elderly housekeeper stood there, her hands trembling around a tray of untouched tea. "Mr. De Santis requests your presence in the east courtyard," she whispered. The fear in the woman's eyes wasn't natural. It was a warning. Emilia thanked her, but instead of walking directly to the courtyard, she took a different hallway she had memorized while studying the estate's floor plans. Years of coordinating high-profile events had taught her one rule: Never follow a last-minute schedule change without verifying who ordered it. As she reached a balcony overlooking the courtyard, her breath caught. Luca wasn't there. Neither were his guards. The courtyard was completely empty. Trap. The sharp crack of a sniper rifle shattered the silence. The bullet exploded against the stone pillar inches from her shoulder. Before she could react, masked men burst from hidden service corridors. Take her alive. Another shot echoed across the estate. Alarms screamed. Within seconds, the peaceful mansion transformed into a battlefield. Luca had been in the underground command center when the emergency alert flashed across every monitor. Unauthorized breach. East perimeter compromised. His expression turned to ice. Where's Emilia? No one answered. That was answer enough. He drew his pistol. Locked down every gate. The order thundered through the fortress. And bring her back. Outside, gunfire erupted from every direction. Security teams exchanged relentless fire with heavily armed mercenaries wearing no identifying insignia. Smoke grenades rolled across the marble walkways, swallowing the gardens in thick gray clouds. 2 kidnappers rushed toward Emilia. She didn't panic. She observed. The attackers weren't shooting to kill. They kept glancing toward the northern vehicle entrance. Extraction point. She sprinted in the opposite direction, not randomly but toward the estate's grand ballroom. Earlier that week, while reviewing preparations for a diplomatic charity gala, she'd studied every emergency evacuation route, hidden service corridor, and reinforced exit design for VIP guests. She burst through the ballroom doors. "Everyone this way," she shouted to terrified staff members hiding beneath tables. "But the front entrance is exactly where they expect you to run." Her calm voice cut through the panic. "Follow me." 30 frightened employees obeyed without hesitation. She unlocked a concealed emergency corridor hidden behind an ornamental wall panel. The passage led safely beneath the estate to the armored wine vaults. One by one, cooks, maids, assistants, and junior guards disappeared into safety. A violent explosion shook the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers crashed from the ceiling. Emilia turned just in time to see 3 gunmen blocking the only remaining exit. "So that's the famous bride," one sneered. "Boss said she's worth more alive." Before they could move, bullets tore through the stained glass windows. Luca entered like a storm. Precise. Controlled. Terrifying. His elite security unit followed in flawless formation. The firefight lasted less than a minute. When the smoke settled, the surviving attackers had surrendered. The rest never stood again. Luca crossed the ruined ballroom without taking his eyes off Emilia. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "I got the staff out." His chief of security hurried forward. 43 civilians survived because Miss Hartley redirected them through the emergency evacuation tunnels. Another guard added, almost in disbelief, if she'd followed the original route, they would have walked straight into the ambush. Silence settled over the shattered ballroom. Luca looked at Emilia as though seeing her for the first time. She hadn't just survived. She had saved lives. Without military training. Without a weapon. Only by staying calm and using the professional instincts that had made her one of the world's finest event planners. For the first time in years, Luca realized something impossible. His empire needed someone who didn't think like a soldier. It needed someone who thought like Emilia. That evening, the estate was unusually quiet. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the private library while doctors treated the wounded downstairs. Luca entered carrying a velvet box. "I've never accepted expensive gifts," Emilia said gently. "It isn't payment." He placed the box on the table. Inside rested an elegant platinum bracelet set with a single sapphire, its delicate design resembling an infinity knot. She looked up. "It's beautiful. So are you." The words came naturally. Without calculation. Without performance. She lowered her eyes, a faint blush warming her cheeks. "I've spent years hearing that I should lose weight before wearing jewelry like this." His jaw tightened. They lied. He carefully fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It wasn't made to fit a smaller woman." His voice softened. "It was chosen to fit the woman who saved my people." Emotion caught in her throat. "No one has ever looked at me the way you do." Then everyone before me was blind. For a long moment, neither moved. The world outside seemed to disappear. Their eyes met. The distance between them slowly faded. Just as Luca's hand gently brushed her cheek. 3 rapid knocks echoed against the library door. His intelligence chief entered, pale-faced. "We interrogated one of the attackers." Luca's expression hardened instantly. "And?" He admitted someone inside this house provided today's security schedules. A heavy silence followed. Then came the final blow. The informant knew exactly where Miss Hartley would be. Luca instinctively stepped closer to Emilia, because whoever had betrayed him was preparing to strike again. 1 week after the failed ambush, the De Santis empire refused to hide. If anything, Luca did the opposite. He announced the annual De Santis Foundation Charity Gala, inviting diplomats, CEOs, judges, politicians, and the heads of Italy's most powerful families. Officially, it celebrated scholarships and hospitals funded by the foundation. Unofficially, it was a message: the De Santis family was still standing, and anyone plotting against them had failed. The ballroom inside the family's oceanside palace shimmered beneath towering crystal chandeliers. White orchids cascaded from gold pedestals, a live orchestra filled the room with elegant strings, and servers glided across polished marble carrying silver trays of champagne. Every detail reflected perfection. Every detail had been redesigned by Emilia. She had transformed the gala in only 5 days, reorganizing guest flow, strengthening emergency exits, adjusting seating to prevent political rivalries from erupting, and discreetly weaving additional security into the evening without making a single guest feel watched. It looked effortless. Only Luca knew how impossible it had been. As Emilia descended the grand staircase, conversations across the ballroom faded. She wore a deep emerald evening gown tailored to celebrate, not hide, her curvy figure. The elegant silhouette flowed gracefully around her, while the sapphire bracelet Luca had given her sparkled beneath the chandeliers. She no longer lowered her shoulders. She no longer tried to disappear. Confidence had replaced apology. Several women who had mocked her appearance during the wedding preparations exchanged uncomfortable glances. One whispered, "How did she become this?" Another answered quietly, "She didn't become anything. We simply never noticed." Across the room, Luca watched without speaking. His normally unreadable expression softened. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply belonged. His trusted advisor Marco leaned closer. "People are staring. They should." Luca never looked away from Emilia. "She's extraordinary." The evening's business summit began after dinner. Representatives from international shipping companies negotiated contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars while mafia captains discussed expanding legitimate investments across Europe. Tension rose when executives argued over a complicated logistics agreement. Voices became sharper. Accusations followed. One CEO finally slammed his folder shut. "This partnership is impossible." Emilia quietly requested permission to speak. Several executives exchanged amused smiles. "The event planner?" One captain muttered, "This should be entertaining." Ignoring every skeptical glance, Emilia walked toward the digital display. Within minutes, she reorganized the shipping timeline, redistributed warehouse capacity, adjusted port schedules, and proposed a revised sequence that eliminated the conflicts entirely. The room fell silent. One executive recalculated the projections. His eyes widened. "We saved nearly $40 million. Another slowly nodded. "This actually works." The same captain who had laughed at her lowered his head. "I was wrong." Luca rose from his chair. In front of every guest, every executive, and every member of his organization, he walked to Emilia's side. Without hesitation, he took her hand. "This woman," he said calmly, his voice carrying through the silent ballroom, "is not my guest." He looked directly at the captains who had underestimated her. "She is the reason dozens of my people are alive." Then at the executives. "The reason this agreement exists." Finally, he turned toward Emilia. "And the only person whose judgment I trust as much as my own." The applause began slowly, then spread across the ballroom. For the first time in her life, Emilia wasn't being noticed despite her appearance. She was being respected because of who she was. The celebration ended shortly before midnight. Luca insisted on personally driving Emilia back to the cliffside estate in an armored convoy. Halfway along the coastal highway, her phone vibrated. A message. "The traitor isn't in Luca's council. It's someone he calls family. Meet me alone if you want proof. 10 minutes. Old lighthouse." Her heart pounded. The message included a photograph. It showed Luca embracing an older man she had often seen inside the estate. His uncle. The man who had practically raised him. Emilia's instincts screamed that it could be another trap. But if the evidence was real, Luca's life remained in danger. She quietly asked the convoy to stop, pretending she had become carsick. Before the security team realized she had slipped away, She disappeared into the fog surrounding the abandoned lighthouse. Inside, silence greeted her. Then came slow applause. From the shadows emerged Vittorio Romano, the ruthless head of the rival syndicate. Beside him stood Luca's uncle, smiling. The betrayal struck harder than any bullet. "So," Vittorio said, his cold voice echoing through the crumbling tower, "our little planner solved every puzzle, except the one that truly mattered." Emilia turned toward the exit. Masked gunmen blocked every doorway. Behind her, Luca's uncle calmly pulled a pistol from his jacket. "You made one mistake," he said. "You convinced Luca you was his future." He aimed the weapon directly at her. "So tonight." His finger tightened on the trigger. "I'll make sure he watches his future die." Far down the coastline, Luca's convoy commander suddenly realized Emilia was gone. Luca's face drained of all color. Then, for the first time in years, the feared Mafia boss abandoned every plan, every protocol, and every strategic calculation. He drove straight toward the lighthouse, knowing he might already be too late. The first gunshot echoed through the abandoned lighthouse. Emilia dropped behind a weathered stone pillar as the bullet shattered centuries-old brick where her head had been only a heartbeat earlier. Dust filled the air. Vittorio Romano smiled. Alive was optional. Luca's uncle raised his pistol again. "You should have stayed at the altar." Outside, the roar of engines thundered across the cliffs. Black armored SUVs burst through the iron gates surrounding the lighthouse grounds. The De Santis family had arrived. Within seconds, the night exploded into chaos. Automatic gunfire lit the darkness. Elite security teams stormed the compound while Romano's mercenaries fired from broken windows and rooftops. Explosions ripped through abandoned guard towers, sending burning debris into the sea below. Luca stepped from the lead vehicle with frightening calm. His tailored black suit was hidden beneath a bulletproof vest, but his expression remained colder than the ocean wind. "No negotiations," he ordered. "Bring her home." His soldiers surged forward. Inside the lighthouse, Emilia refused to wait helplessly. While Vittorio's men exchanged fire with Luca's forces, she studied the building. Years of planning international events had taught her to memorize structures within minutes. The lighthouse wasn't just old. It was unstable. A maintenance blueprint displayed near the entrance earlier had revealed a forgotten emergency generator beneath the central staircase. One overloaded fuel line. One damaged support beam. If activated incorrectly, the lower floor would collapse, blocking every escape route except the hidden coastal tunnel used during restoration decades ago. She smiled faintly. Vittorio believed he had trapped her. In reality, he had trapped himself. Quietly slipping behind stacked wooden crates, Emilia reached the generator controls. She redirected the fuel valves exactly as she'd once coordinated emergency power systems for historic venues. A warning alarm suddenly screamed through the building. "What did you do?" one mercenary shouted. Before anyone could react. Boom. The lower staircase collapsed in a violent burst of concrete and steel. Half of Romano's gunmen were trapped beneath the rubble. Smoke swallowed the interior. Confusion spread instantly. Outside, Luca recognized the opportunity. Advance. The De Santis soldiers overwhelmed the remaining resistance with disciplined precision. Within minutes, the battle had turned completely. At the lighthouse summit, Vittorio grabbed Emilia by the arm and dragged her toward the edge overlooking the crashing waves. "If I lose everything." He pressed a pistol against her shoulder. "So does Luca." Footsteps echoed behind them. Luca emerged through the smoke. His weapon remained lowered. "Let her go." Vittorio laughed. The mighty Luca De Santis. The man who chose a woman over an empire. Luca never looked away from Emilia. "I'd choose her every time." Those words stunned everyone. Even Emilia. For years Luca had ruled through fear. Tonight, he ruled through love. Vittorio fired. At the same instant, Emilia twisted sideways, driving her elbow into his injured wrist. The shot flew harmlessly into the night. Luca fired once. Cling. Precise. Vittorio Romano collapsed. Across the rooftop, Luca's uncle attempted to escape through the service ladder. He barely reached the first step before the very captains he had betrayed surrounded him. "You betrayed your own blood," Marco said quietly. "There is no place left for traitors." The old man lowered his weapon. His empire of lies ended in silence. Dawn painted the Mediterranean in shades of gold as emergency crews departed the cliffs. For the first time in years, peace felt possible. Several months later, the same cathedral stood beneath clear blue skies. This time Emilia walked toward the altar by choice. She wore a breathtaking ivory gown that celebrated every graceful curve she had once tried to hide. She no longer wondered whether she was enough. Because every day Luca had shown her she always had been. Waiting for her stood the most feared mafia boss in Europe. Only now, when he looked at her, there was no coldness left. Only love. As they exchanged vows, Luca gently held both of her hands. You never needed to become someone else. His voice was steady. You showed me that strength isn't built through fear. He smiled softly. It's built through loyalty. Emilia's eyes filled with tears. And you taught me, she whispered, that love should never ask someone to become smaller. After the ceremony, Luca placed a simple platinum ring beside the sapphire bracelet she still wore. Then, before hundreds of guests, he turned toward the leaders of the De Santis organization. I've spent my life building this empire. He looked proudly at Emilia. Now I build our future. He handed her the ceremonial signet ring of the De Santis family. Gasps swept through the hall. No woman had ever received it. Not as a gift. As an equal. The captain stood first. Then the advisors. Finally, every member of the organization bowed their heads. Welcome, Signora De Santis. Not their queen because she married the boss. Their queen because she had earned every ounce of their respect. Months later, the De Santis Foundation expanded across Europe, funding hospitals, schools, and community projects. Luca continued protecting the empire, while Emilia reshaped its future with wisdom, compassion, and the quiet confidence that had saved countless lives. Together, they proved that the strongest kingdoms are not built by fear alone, but by trust, respect, and unwavering devotion. The end. If you enjoyed this mafia romance, don't forget to leave a comment with your favorite moment, like the video, share it with fellow romance lovers, and subscribe for more cinematic mafia love stories filled with passion, suspense, and unforgettable happy endings.